Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Better World with Julann and Fran. Once again, my co-host Julann cannot be with us today because of a family emergency, but we are here, and she would be here if she could be here. And today we're speaking with Rachel Dotson. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you for having me, Fran. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. And Rachel, could you talk a little bit about something that you're doing now or that you have done in the past to make the world a better place?
Sure. Um, well, I am a New Zealander. I was born and bred and raised in New Zealand and started a wonderful adventure when I was, how old was I? I think I was 22 when I came over to America. I studied as a behavioral therapist in New Zealand and wanted to further my studies abroad, really. And so I had this wonderful, powerful desire to come to America for some reason. Actually, it wasn't to America, it was just to travel in general. But paths crossed, and I ended up in New Jersey, just outside of New York, working at a hospital for special needs. So I started my adventure there. A couple of weeks later, I met a really great American man from Florida who had also just traveled to New Jersey at the same time. So we fell in love, got married, and had children. And after my first son was born, I had a natural water birth with midwives. And it was so instinctual to me to trust my body and to trust the people that were around me, supporting me in my desire to have just a normal birth. I was not up with that this was such a new thing in America, that people weren't having water births, that people just kind of handed over their power to the medical community and said, help me birth my baby. And I was unaware of the horrific stories that were going on around me and thinking that my experience was normal for me. It was what I had known in New Zealand. It was what I had known here. I didn't have any scans. I didn't have any ultrasounds. We didn't know what the sex of the baby was. I just trusted and was guided by, my inner being as well as the really competent medical people that were around me, but wanted to support my plan. And that was when I realized that the world is chronically dysregulated with everything. As soon as something, the people that were also pregnant at the same time, as soon as their babies didn't kick a certain way, or um, they didn't move the way they were supposed to, or they were growing too fast, or they were growing too small, I felt everybody's nervous system just become more and more deregulated and just worrying about things that the percentage of possibilities was so slim to none that they were causing more harm than good. So that kind of sparked my behavioral science brain, right? Wondering why, we have this critical mind that is just raging, going on the whole time, telling us all these things that we, should or should not be doing or what we're thinking. But when you go into a birthing zone, it's completely different. It's an inner world, an inner sanctuary that is really in control of everything. So once I felt that connection, that hypnotic connection while I was in birth, just because of my own teachings, I really realized that there was something very profoundly important about using and identifying this aspect of our mind and how we could really lean in on it and trust that more than the crazy monkey mind, I guess some people call it, that go on. So I had a wonderful birth and proceeded to go on and have two more after that, but it sparked an interest in me. So my children went through Waldorf school. I became a Waldorf advocate as well as preacher of natural birthing and childhood. But also I'm surrounded by a very metropolitan area. So, and my husband's went to MIT, studied biology. So we were, I feel, a good combination of me, of my parental background and my influences from New Zealand, as well as just my inner being of knowing what this path should be and just trusting the process really, with my husband's like MIT biology mathematic kind of rigidity, right? And so we kind of fumbled through as young parents do. And then, fast forward a few years, I raised them and really tried to to bring, we're also practicing Buddhists. We have a temple in Japan that we travel back and forth to. And when you reach the age of 16, kind of like with most, um, platforms of some kind of astrology or religion, that your children go through a ceremony. So my son, my oldest son, who's now just about to be 19, um, was going through that process in himself. So it kind of, the subconscious just kind of became more and more important to me in terms of how I raise my children and teaching my children to trust and be more intuitive than logically thinking constantly all the time. So my oldest son, who's a professional rock climber, was traveling to Japan to practice with the Japanese um, climbing community, Olympic, actually pre-Olympic community to be exact. And this is fast forwarding many, many years, of course, but he had left high school early to be homeschooled by my husband so that he could concentrate on his climbing. And when he first started, he told us that he was scared of heights.
Oh,
And so we were like, oh dear, this is a problem for a rock climber to be fearful of heights when you're going into competitions, because by this point he had only done indoor climbing but was starting on the outdoor world. So he was about to go to Yosemite, he was going over to Spain, he was doing all these amazing trips. So when I thought about it, I remembered that, there was you're born with two proper fears, right? The fear of noise and the fear of being dropped. So I realized that height was just a phobia. So when I started doing research, I realized that hypnotherapy could help with that. So I investigated and we did a couple of, um, online recordings and whatnot. And then I decided that, well, this is fascinating once I started reading into it and how it was used in all these different aspects. And it just kind of folded back into the way that I had been raising my children and living my life just subconsciously, right? Without knowing that I was being drawn down this area. So I went to school, HMI. By this point, I'd been practicing on Eli anyway, because I was already very interested in it. And he had overcome his fear of heights. So he was climbing, he was doing really well, he was traveling the world, and it was very, very exciting for him. And I have two very other competitive sports children as well. And I've always been in mental health in some way. My mother was a fierce advocate for people with intellectual disabilities in New Zealand, and she is a diversional therapist. So I had been surrounded by people that were, either disabled in some way cognitively or suffered from depression or some kind of emotional irregularity that they were struggling with. And what I saw around my kids in sports was how if we regulated the nervous system and taught the children or teenagers how to regulate their own nervous systems, it obviously enhances their performance on the court, depending on whatever sport they were playing, because if your nervous system isn't regulated right, we know that your breath gets shorter, your
mm,
muscles constrict, you start
mm.
to sweat, your vision blurs, you get narrowed vision. So that obviously affects performance. So I started doing mindful Mondays with my varsity boys basketball team up at our local high school. It's a very big high school. It's a very prestigious public high school that's known for its sport as well as its academics. So I was like, oh, wow, we'll just give this a little shot and see what happens. Um, and I was shocked by how receptive I had these 6'2" varsity boys laying on the linoleum floor, all out cold, while I was hypnotizing them for sports performance, as well as just nervous system regulation, right? The room was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And so I did that for a couple of Mondays, and then there was a gap, and we were unable to meet because of holidays, and I think there was some snow or something. And on the second Monday that we missed, I had 7 varsity boys all text me privately and say, Miss Dotson, are we meeting today for Mindful Mondays? And it was at that point I was like, oh my goodness, I think we're really onto something here. So I said, well, I can nip up now if you boys want to meet me in the gym. So I had voluntarily on the day off that the boys were not in school. I had 7 boys come and want to learn skills and understand the subconscious more, and their testimonials about how it had helped them face conflict within school relationships. They, had noticed that when they were going onto the court, they were feeling calmer and more confident. And there was just a whole slew of like really great feedback that came back from it. So that's where my friend and I started a company called Theta Fuel, which is a sports performance company, but it predominantly just teaches nervous system regulation and connecting back into yourself and setting yourself goals to be able to achieve, and how if you keep your nervous system regulated um, and being able to look at things objectively and so forth, you can really make big, impactful differences, not just to yourself, but to everybody around you. We talk about mirror neurons. So we really try and spread it out, that this is more of a collective as well as an individual practice. And I am so hopeful, and I feel so, in a world that is very unhopeful at the moment and can seem a little dark at times, that we have this younger generation that are really absorbing and have interest in something that is bigger than themselves. And that's, it's a nice way to start your day, to start your week on a Mindful Monday, right?
Oh, it's lovely. And that is a very hope-filled and hope-inspiring thing to say, that it's a younger generation who is getting the benefit of this, and they will then carry that forward to their, offspring, to their friends, to their family, to people they just encounter, as they're going about their day. And it is definitely making the whole world a better place. That's wonderful.
Isn't it wonderful? Yes, I feel truly um, thankful that I get to experience this with teens, especially because I have always been with younger children. That was where my education was. That was where my knowledge was. It was where my comfort zone was, even. And so to step out of that comfort zone and be with these, enormous boys that are so. I mean, is my older son, sorry, is as tree huggy vegan Buddhist as you could possibly get. And so being surrounded by these boys that were completely different than my son, it was a very humbling learning experience, to say the least, but so exciting as well to have a whole different perspective. It was uncomfortable for me to see how I had assumed so much about a certain demographic of teenage boy, thinking that this was just how, this is how they were. They were jocks, they did this, and they would never really want to fully embrace this. And I couldn't have been further from reality. It was very, very humbling, but wonderful at the same time.
Yes, well, you're certainly not the only one who's made that assumption. I've heard other people say, oh, well, it's a guy, they're not going to they won't be open to it. Did you try it? Just give it a try, see how it goes. Because they are open to it.
Very open, and especially when it's phrased in a way, it just shows you it's about timing. If it's the
Hmm.
right time in their existence and their being, and being able to build rapport with them on a level that they are connected to, that is important to them. So I'm sure if I had gone at it a different, the way that I had gone with my son to begin with, the way we've been brought up, it wouldn't have been as receptive. But because it was framed in a way, well, this is going to help your performance. This is going to enhance, your goals and, where you want to be, they were all over it. And then they realized how powerful it was and how important it was and how it was helping them in their studies and how it was helping them, as I said before, in all aspects of their lives, which was really wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. All aspects of their lives. So many people don't realize how much time we spend in hypnosis. You
Yeah.
know, being mindful is the perfect antidote for being in hypnosis. A lot of times when I get a new client, one of the questions I ask is, "Have you been hypnotized in the past?" And they will almost always say no.
Yes, isn't that
You know,
interesting?
it's like, well, have you ever, done something and forgotten that you'd done it? Like you're supposed to lock the door and later on in the day you find your keys and you go, oh goodness, did I lock the door? It's, you did lock the door, you physically locked the door, but your mind was somewhere else. And that is being in hypnosis.
Yes, I say the same thing all the time, and it's that was very enlightening for me to learn as well. It's not something that we think because we all go off and do dreamy, and as we know, right, some people are more dreamy than others, myself included. I could quite happily sit in hypnosis all day, every day, and be extremely happy. It's more of a problem of pulling me out of it more than keeping me in it. Um, and so once that was pointed out, it was a good transition to be able to, say this is what it is, and everyone's here, and it's totally natural and totally normal, and this is where all the really powerful, cool work can be done. Um,
Right.
yeah, helping them understand that was the first step, really.
That's great. And you appealed to them on a level that they with which they could certainly relate because it had to do with sports and they wanted to be better at sports.
Mhm. Yeah.
But at the same time, you're also helping them in every other area because you're teaching them how to be mindful. So even things like eating a meal, we tend to eat and read, or look at our phones or do something else while we're eating. But it's really important when you're eating a meal, especially if you've got a client who wants to lose weight. You
Yes.
have to know that that meal is there. You have to experience it with all of your senses, the plate, the silverware, the whatever it may be doing, and you have to really experience it. And that's exactly what you're teaching them. Be more mindful in every aspect of your life.
Yes, and exactly. That's a beautiful way to describe it. The way that our Buddhist religion is that there is, the essence of eternity or, reincarnation of what it is in everything, right? There is same in every living aspect of the world. And what we need to be doing as eternal beings is connecting into that aspect, right? So that's pretty much the analogy that I use for the children or the teens, I should say, is that everything has its own motion in the world. Everything has its own purpose, its own being. And if we just move past things and grab them and keep on running, we're not connecting into it. Therefore, we're not being grounded and we're not learning and experiencing what we need to from that situation. And food is a perfect example of that. And just being with people, and while you're huddled up in your little huddle, right, letting all your mirror neurons all gauge in and connect into each other so that when you're going out on the court, you are as one. You are playing as one. It's automatic behavior. It's not consciously thinking, and it's not that little voice validating you or critiquing you or giving you criticism. It's you're working on automatic behaviors, all of you together as a collective consciousness, whether that's eating food, whether that's talking about schoolwork. It's about being fully present, connected to where you are in that moment and staying present and giving your attention to something that is right in front of you. This is the most important thing you need to do right now, so let's do it the best way that we possibly can and
Yes.
learn from it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and when they're playing as one, they're more intuitive with each other and they
Mm.
can communicate better and they can, know what the other one is thinking of doing or doing, that kind of thing. And that's wonderful.
It is, and teaching them that the mistakes and the failures that come with life, right, is being a big part of teaching of connecting this all together for the boys. I feel like our society is so fearful of failure that we see it as such a negative thing and it should be avoided at all costs because bad things come from failure, right? So what when what that looks like in nervous system regulation when they're talking on the basketball court, say, is that instead of the head going down and then flumping their hand, those mirror neurons go on everybody, so everybody's head slops and their hands go right, so it brings the energy down for everything. So rather than saying this is bad, this is failure is negative, you lift we were teaching the boys, you lift your head up, you lock in eyes with the person that's looking at you or locking in with you, and it's a good exchange of this is okay, we're all right, we're going to keep moving through it. So once we had that practiced on the court and they were able to connect in, like whether it be a, fist bump, even just a simple eye connection. It was how do I say, the recovery time after a mistake was pretty much non-existent. Before there had been, a lot of dragging. It took like a few goes up and down the court to get back into the rhythm. But once they all started practicing that it's okay and that we just keep moving through and that their nervous systems felt safe in that environment, that it was all right to, make to overthink something and hesitate or whatever it was. If they were just to submit and hand it over, it was accepted. And not only was accepted, it was praised and celebrated for their nervous system. So their play just got more fluid. It just got better. And of course, that just lifted everybody right up, right? And then once we talked about that outside of the basketball court and how, look, we all had those failures. And then it was acceptance of those failures and how do we learn from those? We decided that we wouldn't use the word failure anymore. That word was just not a useful word for the path that we were traveling. So that was kind of a really beautiful moment as well, where I was like, wow, we could never really have ever talked about this in such a meaningful, impactful way had I have had them sitting in a classroom in a health class or whatever it was, telling them how important mirror neurons are and how important the subconscious is for their life. Like they actually felt it. They actually experienced what it felt like to be celebrated and not really celebrated, but cocooned after something had gone wrong on the court and it was okay. So that was a pretty cool moment in terms of, subconscious realization as well.
Right. And you also mentioned at one point that it is a learning experience.
Definitely.
You
Yeah.
know, even if you experienced something that at one point would have been called a failure, well, what was it that you did that you could have done differently, and how will you do it differently the next time?
Yes, and just trying to make the world a better place by helping people feel safe within themselves, right? When people feel regulated and connected to who they are, they make better decisions, whether it's on in a basketball or a sports situation, or whether it's just in their life. I mean, I parent differently when I feel regulated, right? I I lead very differently. I focus more on the nervous system, safety and emotional awareness when I feel good and when I feel regulated. So it's been a wonderful journey so far. And to be honest, it's just started this part of it. I've been a therapist for a long time, but in terms of where I feel like I'm doing real meaningful work, it's like gone right back to birthing, if that makes sense, because I felt this connection the very first time I was in a water bath with, birthing my first child. So it's kind of a nice full circle. I'm excited to keep going down on this path with it for sure. I feel like I've just scratched the ice and there's so much more to learn and experience.
Yes, yes, yes. And I absolutely agree with you about the Western medical the whole environment. It does seem to be a bit much at times. And I love anytime somebody can make a natural choice like that. I
Yeah.
always support them in that because, I
Mhm.
compare it to, if you wanted to make your biceps stronger, you lift weights to make it stronger, and you actually create tiny tears in your muscle. And then you rest and your muscle repairs itself and you wind up stronger. So I think that applies to anything that you do, that if it's natural and you do it for yourself, you're making yourself stronger.
Yes, I agree. I agree very much. I mean, they push, coaches push their athletes to the brink of physical um you know, finish physical training, right? But they never, um, very rarely do they ever strengthen the mind. And so when you have a body that's so strong and so physically capable, and then you put them in a very high pressure situation, the access that they have got to their subconscious or to their actual, nervous system is normally pretty slim. So you have these really
Right.
talented athletes that are going out. I mean, we can just talk about the poor ice skater for example, right? I mean, he had identity dysregulation, didn't he? So he has all this talent, And then when he gets put under pressure, the access that he has to being able to regulate his nervous system and cut off what his identity is as him as a human being, opposed to what he is as an ice skater, was just non-existent. So that's what we were seeing in teenagers around our area, like kids coming up to us and saying, we just don't know why we don't perform well. We do it in practice, we do it, when we're just playing around, but when we get on the court, I don't know why I didn't play good. So that was another indicator of, where we needed to start, where we needed to teach the kids, or how we needed to teach them that having access to a part of yourself when you're under pressure is life. Like that's life. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
like especially if you're birthing and you don't really, your nervous system, your subconscious doesn't truly have rapport with the people around you, doesn't trust what's going on. It just wants to protect you. So it is going to shut everything down. It does not matter if you have the best birthing plan in the world. If you do not trust your body, if you do not feel calm, confident, and have the right support around you, your body's going to shut down, and there's nothing except for medical intervention that will be able to help you in that situation. But people not understanding that there is another option. When I was having, any of my children, I was talking to other mothers, they would often say to me, "Oh, I didn't know there was a different way to do it." So
Mm.
not only did they weren't even given the choice to want to do it one way or another way. So, as you said, the medical community, I don't think that was, listen, my son's 19 now, so that was a fair few years ago, and hopefully it's moved further from that existence now, but I don't know, it doesn't seem to be too much. So, but
Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate. And you also mentioned the importance of feeling safe.
yes,
As I have explained to probably all of my clients for my entire career, um, when you're feeling unsafe, and maybe you don't even realize it on a conscious level, it's because of whatever it is that's causing you the stress. But that's your conscious thought. Your subconscious thought is this thing, whatever it is going to kill me if I don't run from it or fight it off, you know?
yes.
And so it's magnified. The feeling of not being safe is just so blown out of proportion because you feel like you're about to die, and that's the worst thing that can happen, you know?
Totally. And it
Yeah.
makes total sense when you think about it, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
the subconscious only accepts change when it feels safe. Safe. So safety is the doorway into all that way, I guess. And that's where the real true change happens. And I think this is where Waldorf and Buddhism and the the water birth philosophy kind of all connects really beautifully, is that it's the rhythm of predictability, the gentle pacing, tone of voice, explaining the process, never overriding someone's autonomy, which, often happens with mothers and birthing, or not in just in motherhood in general, because everybody has an opinion. Everybody has had a situation. Everybody, I mean, I was the best parent until I had children. And I think some of that, um, some of that advice just really disrupts all of that, those beautiful concepts, really. So my job, isn't to control someone's mind. I don't think it's really to help them feel safe enough to have access to their own being within themselves, really, is how we kind of look at it here.
Oh, I love that. See,
Yeah.
you are the best parent. That's a wonderful thing to do. I think, you know, if you're the sort of parent who tries to make your child do things the right way, you're trying to you're trying to make that person somebody that he or she is not.
Oh, definitely. And we found that when we were going through this process with Eli, my older son, where he, as I said, our school district's very academic. I have three beautiful children that have dyslexia and ADD and dyscalculia and all these wonderful things that enhance their personalities. But the struggles in a school system, and especially in our school system that's very academically driven. And we just kept swimming upstream, just beating that horse as dead as it could possibly get and not having any change at all. And then Eli was the one that said, I cannot do this anymore. I do not want to go to this school. I cannot function in this. My nervous system, like my body is just telling me this is not right. And, you're so used to doing the same thing over and over again. And I could have counseled anybody's else's family, children into knowing exactly what they needed to do. But as soon as it was staring me in my face, that's when all my own issues and insecurities and everything came up that I had to deal with that before I could ever see the horrors that poor Eli was going through. And then once he advocated for himself and was like, I don't understand why this is happening. Like, why aren't we taking different options? My husband and I were like, wow, we just got schooled. Like, we need to be practicing what we preach. So we pulled him out of, a very, very good public school system and homeschooled him, and now we've sent him to New Zealand to go to school in New Zealand, and it was just very different from anything around us, and that took a lot of nervous system regulation to be able to sit with that and be like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, and it's okay, this is a good thing. And turned out so far it is. But not overthinking it too much came into, and not listening to everyone else's opinions was also extremely important in that situation.
Oh, well, that's a wonder. It's also a wonderful testament to you and your husband that your son knew that he could advocate for himself.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say. It's true. I we do feel very privileged that we have created hopefully a sustainable environment where our children will always be able to come for us. We both come from, my husband was an only child, and I'm obviously far away from my family, and we never really had that tight unit um, growing up. So it was very important to me um, when I was raising the kids. When Madeline, I have a bookend daughter, sons and a daughter in between, and my two older ones are only 18 months apart. So when we had them, they did everything together. They had one ice cream that they shared. They had one ball. They leaned on each other. They were in one bedroom. I really wanted them to like each other. I really
Aw.
wanted them to be there for each other. Turns out that worked out pretty well. Um, and it was not an easy thing to do by any means. And trust me, they still fight now. But it was a good a good way, I think, of connecting us all together as a little unit, because we don't really have any other family. We just have ourselves. So to lean on and to support on. So I wanted to make sure that it was done a little right, like as
Oh,
well as I could do it at least.
well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for raising your children that way. You've turned your children into people who are now going to go out into the world to be good people and make the world a better place too. So that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. That was, in all honesty, all I'm wanting is, and our kids know that so much that, grades aren't going to get you the happiness that your soul, the eternal part of yourself, whatever you want to say, is actually striving for. No one's going to remember those things about you. You're not going to make a big impact on the world by getting straight A's when you're in high school. So they're important, don't get me wrong. We all need to have higher education. I very strongly believe in that. But it's also what higher education looks for each individual, and how and what they need as
Yeah.
a human to be as productive and useful to the world as it needs to be. So teaching the children that if you want to go out and pick up rubbish, be the best rubbish picker that you can pick up. Walk those sidewalks and pick up not just the ones in the tins, but also the stuff on the road. Like, be conscious about what your place is in this world and how you can how you can do it to the best of your ability.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. This has been a really interesting episode. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so
Um,
much for having me.
when somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
Oh, that's a good question. Someone who wants to get in contact with me can probably, at this point, our website's still in creation, is my last name, which is Dotson, Dotson, Dotson Rachie, Rachie @gmail.com.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being our guest this week. This has been another episode of A Better World with Julann and Fran with our guest, Rachel Dotson. Please like and share this video, and please join us again next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fran. It was lovely talking to you.
Lovely talking to you too.
Bye bye.